I think this video can really help you, in particular now that Christmas is approaching. So, I'm gonna tell you how my relationship with my family, my dynamic family relationship, changed after my awakening. And I always prefer to give you um, example of non-duality, concrete example, non-duality applied to the life of every day. Sometimes non-duality can be a little bit difficult to understand, and even if complexity in the teaching is sometimes made express in order to confuse the mind and to relax the mind. I want to mix a little bit of that and a little bit also non-duality applied to the everyday life. So here we go. Today we're gonna talk about my relationship with my family and how it changed after my awakening. And before my awakening, I would say that a lot of the classic emotion that every child that is being educated, born and raised in a very complex family, very dysfunctional family, feel like anger and sadness and resentment were there. I would say the relationship with my father, I always thought that my father was the problem in my family, that he was the mean man. And this is because my mother was taking me like a personal psychologist since I was very young. And so I was always hearing my mother's side, and I never heard my father's side until I was older after. And so I had a really biased idea of my father, my family, the dynamic in my family. And this also shaped a lot the way I was considering men and women. And this is also, I think, a main reason why I tried to become a successful entrepreneur, successfully powerful woman. And I believe all the things that many entrepreneurs, women are believing today. But anyway, this is maybe something for another video. But before my awakening, I would say my mother and me and my mother text every day. My mother would text me every day, and I think we were very close. And I think I never realized before my awakening all the dysfunction that were happening between my mother and how many of the trauma that I have were actually coming from the relationship with my mother. So when I woke up, when I had this big awakening, also the relationship with my mother changed a lot. And I started doing IFS therapy. And in this therapy, I could really get in touch with all the parts of myself. They were suffering and they were manipulated and they were gaslighted, and how much the emotional connection that I needed as a baby and as a child wasn't there. Any particular all that was coming from my mother. So I feel like in the period of time the relationship with my mother started change, and maybe I got colder without really wanting to get colder, but I feel like a distance was happening along in itself just because I don't think it was resentment. I think I was solving the wound and feeling the things during the therapy. I think it was just healthier. I think it was just healthy. My mother sometimes can have, in particular when she's very stressed and often she's very stressed, she can have narcissist traits. And my partner actually helped me to realize some of her behavior weren't healthy. And so during my awakening, I felt a deep grief, a deep, so painful grief for the love that that my brain, in any case, they thought that I had to receive from my mom when I was a child. The attachment style that is being created and grieving and all the pain and the suffering that I never allow myself to feel until I was 33, 34. And it was so healing. It was so healing to not really buying the story my mother and me and my mother did that. Of course, in the dual realm of all that, there is a mother and there is a me and there is my mind believing that my mother manipulate me and she's been narcissist. All that can be believed. But apart of the believing of that, or it was very healing, it was allowing myself to feel the feeling of the grief and the pain that I never allow myself to feel. So allow it in the body. That was deeply, deeply, deeply healing. And it took, I think, 1 year and a half. It was very hard because again, I could see through the behavior of my mom starting from that point. So i- at that point, it was evident all the things that she was doing without, it wasn't her fault. She doesn't know that she does it, right? And I think that's the main thing. When we awake, we start seeing our parents as our parents because they've never been our parents. And we stop seeing our sibling as our sibling because they never been our sibling. We start seeing the being. We start seeing the perfect being and the being that we share with them. This doesn't mean that we're gonna accept their behavior. This doesn't mean that we're gonna see it's gonna be all like, oh, do whatever you want with me since we are loved. It means I can see that you are loved and I feel the deep love and connection and I can touch the space. And in the same time, this is the boundary. And it's not a boundary that is coming from a place of like, me want to be respected. I want to be respected. I deserve this. I want it. This is an ego story. It's more a boundary that is coming from a place of peace and calm, and it's just what it has to happen. It's just that is imposing itself naturally without story behind. And even if there is a story that says she's being treating me like that, uh, it's not really believable. They're just energy they want to shift away, just putting a distance that is naturally happening. So every time I come back in Sardinia, I'm from Sardinia in Italy. Every time I come back to Sardinia, and I don't come back often, maybe once a year. I live now in Bali. I was living in Mexico before, and then UK. So every time the dynamic they have is the same. They haven't changed, or in any case, in my appearance and what I can experience and see, there is no much change in their habitual behavior, habitual energy happening. Um, but with time, I've always been very judgmental about myself, about the fact that I was falling in the trap. Every time I would come back to for Christmas, I would fall in their trap and be reactive and reactive to their behavior and feeling again like the little child. And this stopped happening. Little by little, this stops. So I wouldn't be reactive anymore. I wouldn't be buying in their reactiveness or anger or judgment. Just because again you see the being and you see the habitual reaction that is happening to them, is their nervous system that is like that. It's just what's stronger than them. They're identified with their mind and with their reaction, and there's no filter. And it's just that. So because you start seeing it so much for yourself, because you start observing yourself and your feeling, and see that you know your feeling and you know your thought and you know your emotion, it's very easy to see it in other people. It's really easy to realize when other people are identified with their thoughts and triggered and in their pain body basically, and you can have nothing but compassion. This, of course, it took me time. At the beginning, again, I was still reacting, despite the fact that I was so-called aware. Reaction were still happening, and I think again, habitual energy they want to be purified, and it's just not in me that is doing it. With time, uh, reaction can happen in the body, but the space of peace is easier to find. And again, a boundary after many time, um how can I express that in a in a different way? Um Many judgment, many accusation, many brutal reaction, many things that were nice happened every time that I will come back. In particular, one person in my family. After a while, the boundary just imposes itself. Not coming from a place of anger, not coming from a place of judgment or rejection or I'm mad at you. There's not a me mad at you. Just what is happening, what it has to be done. And with that, the feeling of sadness or having to interrupt the relationship can be felt. Because the only reason why we don't put boundaries because we don't want to feel the feeling. But once you amplify your capacity to feel feeling and you're okay with feeling a feeling, the boundary can happen itself because everything can be felt, even the sadness of having to say stop, even the sadness that comes with the relationship that you had all your life and having to end it. So I really hope for you for this Christmas if you're going back to your family. I'm not. No, because I don't want to because I'm in Bali. But if you're going back to your family, first of all, have grace towards yourself. If reaction are happening towards you when you are in the family dynamic, remember that it's not you doing it. It's just habitual energy that it pops up, all self that it wants to be released and wants to be felt. So go into the body if you can, even if it's too late. Who cares? Go into the body. Too late. Go into the body. Feel the feeling. Be curious with what is happening there instead of believing the narrative of them acting like this to you. Feel the feeling. And then the other thing that I would suggest is start to look at your family not as your family. Your parents are not your parents anymore. They've never been your parents. As your lover is not your lover, as your husband is not your husband, as they know you share the same being. And so you can have much more compassion to see their habitual energy, their old self happening. And you can feel love for the being, even if you dislike the action. You have the right to dislike the action. And a boundary will be put. It will be eventually, if it's necessary, emerge. I start not considering them anymore as your parents, your family, and see the being behind the attitude, the action, the behavior. And let me go how it goes. Oh, by the way, I have a newsletter that I launching, so the Soulful Letter. If you wanna have these reminders in your email box every week, where I point you in this direction of who you really are, find back the path back home, and having apply non-duality teaching everyday life, family, relationship, work, money, wherever, you will receive them every week. So if you want to subscribe, I put the link here down below. Thank you for watching. Leave me a comment, put a like, and see you soon.